The DJI Osmo Action. It looks like that DJI has learned that their Osmo Pocket wasn't the camera that they thought people might believe it to be, and finally released a true action camera. This is the unboxing of the DJI Osmo Action and the installation, well, eventual installation of the Polar Pro filters for the Osmo Action. So the Osmo Action is a response to GoPro Hero 7 Black and 6 and 7 Plus and 7 Max, whatever GoPro is doing now, because their naming conventions are incredibly dumb. The Osmo Action is a true action camera in the same sense that GoPro has action cameras. This thing is built to be used and abused, much like the GoPro versions that it emulates and it hopes to do better at, if that makes any sense. One of the things I learned while unboxing this is that how to unbox it. As you can obviously see, there's nothing spectacular about this particular box. It's all the marketing nonsense mumbo jumbo. But much like DJI typically does, they package their products very poorly with just cardboard and flimsiness, and there's no real presentation about the product. And that's just their mentality, their philosophy across their entire series of products. In this first little box, you have the very few accessories that DJI gives you with the Osmo Action. There's this warning manual. It's not a user manual. It's a warning manual about how to use and properly use the product without voiding your warranty. And don't understand why it needs to be in 50,000 languages. This small box contains the only battery that they give you. The battery is supposed to last between an hour and 15 to 20 minutes or something like that, depending on how you're using the camera. You also get an adapter with a sticky 3M adhesive on the back and a separate adapter, and so you could probably add some sort of ball joint system. There's also a USB-C to USB-A cable for charging the battery, but the battery has to be into the camera before you can charge it, unless you get a separate $80 charging case that can hold two batteries. Oh, DJI, always that markup. There's this little screw-on adapter that goes onto the adapter. So the screw that goes onto the adapter is what I mean to say. That's standard. There's nothing special about it. And finally, the camera. I've never had any other action camera other than the SJ Cam. I've never had a GoPro. I've seen them in the wild, but never touched one. And I'm fairly impressed by how the Osmo Action feels. It's got some heft to it. You feel as if this thing is actually sturdy. I mean, it's made of plastic and probably some metal parts around there to hold the frame, but it feels good. Now, at first, I thought that this case that was around the Osmo Action was waterproof, but really it's just a protective case. It's not a waterproof case. It's just a frame that holds the camera and holds it quite well, as you can see. It's stuck and I couldn't get it out. It's like, why is this so difficult? Is there adhesive still on there? No, the manufacturing process is such that there's really no tolerances. When this thing is inside this housing, it really is inside the housing. And there's only one way you can put it in. You can't put it in upside down. I tried it accidentally, and it wouldn't go. Now on the front is the filter thread, the filter cap essentially. All it is a bezel that has a glass screen on it to help protect the lens. The first thing you want to do, obviously, is pop the battery in. The battery will only go in one way, and this is not the way it should go in. This is. Looking around, there's not much going on with the camera. There's some buttons on the top and on one of the sides. and that there's this little notch thing that you have to pull on in order to get the battery to release, and it takes some force, so it's not just going to come out by itself. And obviously there's that big beautiful screen that we're going to take a look at in the actual review of this product, not in the unboxing. The responsiveness from just hitting one button is fairly good from hitting one button. There's a record button on top, that's the red thing, and peeling off the plastic protective film, you can see that there is in fact the bezel that has the glass or plastic screen on top to protect the actual lens itself. Now, Polar Pro went out of their way in order to make money and made this particular adapter system. So what it is you get 3 filters. You can get more filters. I think there's a different set that you can get that's 5 or 6 filters. The 3 filter set that I got is about $70 or so on Amazon. It has 3 levels of ND filters. It's very well packaged for filters. They're very good. You get some marketing material and a lens cloth and a sticker and business card. That's about it. The filters themselves come in a very nice case. It's very sturdy. It's made of all plastic, but it's fairly sturdy. You'll notice that the filters go from least powerful to most powerful, from top to bottom. So this is ND4, and then ND6, and then ND8. Now, what this is supposed to do is supposed to magnetically attach, and I thought for some strange reason that it was just going to magnetically attach to the bezel on the Osmo, and that's not it. Well, underneath the center, the ND6 filter, the center filter, is the actual magnetic filter thread that has to go onto the DJI Osmo Action. Now, the manual said to just screw it on. Okay, so that was like step 2 of the manual. I skipped step 1 because I figured, how hard could this possibly be? And I was trying to figure out, okay, so does this screw onto the bezel or just kind of magnetically attach onto the bezel? How does this work? And I kept looking underneath all the filters trying to figure out, am I missing something? What? Why? How? Why and how? So I went back to the manual so that I could, read it on camera. And basically what the manual says is the following. Step 1, remove the bezel on the Osmo Action. Step 2, screw on the magnetic filter. Well, that's great if I had only read the instructions. Now, I was wondering, what bezel are they talking about? Because I didn't know there was a bezel until, obviously I figured it out. But it's that gray thing, that glass. It's so well hidden, it's so well machined, it's so well attached to the lens and the camera itself that it was impossible for me to distinguish whether it was a filter thread, bezel, or just part of the camera. And I had no idea, which is why I was so confused. But the instructions on Polar Pro said, twist it off. And I tried to twist it off, but it wouldn't work. It was so on. Which means I had to go to the internet. And I went to the internet and I tried to find an answer, and there was nobody who had the answer to, why doesn't the Polar Pro go on the action camera? Instead, after hours of searching randomly, and then one day stumbling across somebody complaining about not getting the filter off, it was suggested that you use a rubber band and you wrap it around the bezel and then it'll twist right off. And I thought, couldn't be that hard or really that easy. So there I was. I had plenty of rubber bands. So I took a rubber band and twisted it around a couple of times to get a grip. And, like with boxes, I have issues with rubber bands as well. Okay, so I should have gotten a smaller rubber band. Anyway, once the rubber band's on, it just twists off. What? How? Why? When? What? All I needed was a rubber band? Well, that seems a little insane. Anyway, once you apply the right amount of rubber band force, it just screws off. Interesting. Anyway, now that I had it off, and I was so glad that I did, you just take that magnetic screw-on thread thingy that Polar Pro provides, and you can see that it's much thinner than what was originally on the camera. Just screw it back on. Make sure it's tight. I thought about using the rubber band to tighten it, but I figured I'm not going to put in that much effort. But here's the thing. You can't put the original bezel back on after you put the Polar Pro thing on. You just can't do that. And here I am trying all the filters to make sure they are magnetically attached. So the way to protect the lens is to get a UV filter. I'm sure Polar Pro will probably make one if they don't already. And just keep that attached if you don't need an ND filter. And as you just saw, those filters aren't coming off without you actually physically pulling it off. So there you have it.